Alrighty, welcome back to another edition of PA High School Football Report Podcast, 34 Waggle edition. That's Dan Sostek over there, Eric Epler over here. We are in the belly of the beast, PennLive HQ, for another edition of the podcast.
Decked out now.
We are decked out.
Yeah.
We went full. We dug at some helmets from a previous, what do you call that? A landscape?
A setup.
Set. Set.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the big boys call it, a set. So we do have I think there's 3 or 4 rogue helmets flying around the office somewhere too. So we may find them for next week. But anyway, let's get into this week. Dan, okay, quick, fast minute. I'm not going to talk about the Pitt Panthers at all.
Yeah,
forget it.
Yeah.
Syracuse, God bless you. But let's obviously got to do the quick minute on the Pats.
Well, they got it out of the way. It started at 9 a.m. so I could get on with my day. And,
Frankfurt, yes.
I think this type of stuff's probably good for the franchise in the long run. Just be thoroughly embarrassed to force big changes. I mean, but when they said on the broadcast that Bob Kraft had been working for like 15 years to get a game in Germany, and then that's the product he put out. I mean, I think we might be seeing a new sweatshirt on the sidelines next year. So.
I enjoyed they kept planning the little nugget on Twitter with Rob Kraft, and I guess it was the president next to him.
Yeah.
And they basically, the president just said at one point they lip sync. He goes, "We're not good enough.
Yeah,
we're not good enough."
Yeah, I mean,
and I'm like, God, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you for at least saying it.
Yeah, Bob Kraft's he's kind of an elderly man at this point, and I think
Yes.
even he can see
He could throw in the towel.
Yeah,
we'll get a new sweatshirt. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, Dan and I are gonna this week we're gonna remind listeners some of the guys that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, and maybe the tail end of the regular season as well. Guys we've seen as catalysts for their programs. All these teams are obviously still alive in the postseason. Some were not predicted to be at this point. Camp Hill, which we'll have a bunch to say about here in a minute. But all these names to pretty much be recognizable, but they've really sort of stepped up over the past 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, and sort of got their squads to this point. As you probably know, 4 weeks. That's it. 4 weeks left. So we're down to the final 16 teams in each classification. It is getting very, very serious. Some of these teams are in state playoff games. Some like 6A and 5A for us, and 4A still in district playoffs for another 2 weeks.
3A, right?
3A is still in district playoffs for this week.
Yep.
With the championship game between West Perry and Y missing. And obviously Camp Hill has a state game. Steel High has a state game in 1A. So lots happening, lots of mid-pen teams doing really, really impressive things from our side. So we're gonna recognize a few of the catalysts and talk a little bit about what they've sort of meant over this last chunk month of the season to get them to this point. So we earmarked about 9 or 10 guys, I think, Dan, something like that.
Yeah.
Multiple guys from different teams as well. So I'm going to start with you, Dan. Throw out a guy that you've seen that you really, really like. That's again, they've probably been a catalyst all year, but it's been pretty impressive here in the last 2-3 weeks.
Well, I think when you cited Camp Hill as being the surprise team that's still in, I actually think that there's a more surprising team than Camp Hill still, and that is the Hershey Trojans. I mean, what a fall for the Hershey Trojans it's been. I'm heading down to Johnstown to cover their soccer team going for a back-to-back state title. The field hockey team's still in, but I don't think we expected this football team to still be in the semifinals in 5A here. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people responsible for that success, but you can overthink it. You can point to offensive linemen, you can point to defensive backs, you can point to, play calling and coaching. They're there. They're here because of Angel Cabrera. They are here because of the effort that this kid has put forward. I mean, there are a lot of bell cows in the mid-pen. We've got Cole Bartram. We've got Bryce Starretts. Angel Cabrera has been as good as any of them this year, and in the playoffs this year, 2 playoff games so far, 37 carries for 183 yards, and then last week in the upset over New Oxford, 38 carries for 231 rushing yards. Also playing middle linebacker for this team. Just what a senior season this kid has put together. He's kind of had like that Derrick Henry type season,
right,
where with the type where There's some games where he's only going to have like 30, 50 yards, but if you don't hold him to 30 to 50, he's going to go for 170 to 200 yards. And he has been carrying this team all year. There've been, like we said, other good players on this team, no doubt about it. But the effort Angel Cabrera has done, putting the team on his back to get them to the semifinals, it's just been a sight to behold. And what a job Mark Painter's done, just kind of basically saying, get out of the way. Our offense is going to run through. Our offense is going to run through Angel Cabrera, going to run through number 32, and it's working.
Yeah, especially at this time of year, too. And don't get me wrong, Cabrera's been tremendous all season long. He really has. But this time of year, too, when it's imperative to sort of get things going at an even keel, kind of set your own comfortable pace offensively.
And physically impose yourself.
Right. And just sort of, when you come out of the gate and you see a 200 and what is it, 230?
Yeah.
Running like that up the middle and with that kind of confidence and that kind of drive, that first 12 minutes are scary. It takes a while for opponents to kind of come back from that. Yes, we have opponents that they've played so far played wide open.
Yeah.
But to be able to come back to that bell cow, boom, every single time, and Cabrera's been producing every single time, is really impressive and is just really deflating for an opponent, because even if you get the upper hand, okay, now how do we stop this 230-pound beast?
Yeah.
Coming up the middle.
It reminds me a little of Mekhi Hopkins last year, where especially as the game progresses and especially as it gets colder, it becomes miserable to tackle guys like that. Absolutely miserable. And once you keep giving them the ball, linebackers don't want to tackle Angel Cabrera 38 times a game.
Right. And a guy like, which is the other catalyst that we've seen, is Derek Guzman, that I have mentioned here, to have that sort of option too.
Yeah. It's like sugar and spice. Right.
Exactly.
It's the hard hitting, the brutal, just brutal running style of Cabrera, and then just the speed of Guzman.
Well, that was almost the sort of the knock on them, is it was all Cabrera.
Yeah.
Coming into the regular season, it was sort of, if you can pin a team at one-dimensional and take away one side and there's no threat on the other side to throw the ball, then Cabrera's quote-unquote pace and his steps become less effective.
Yeah.
And that just hasn't happened. Guzman's been tremendous too, and they've gotten that. And, when they've needed to step up defensively, they have.
Yeah.
I mean, they've given up some points. Obviously, most teams have, but they've stepped up when needed too. So, congrats to Hershey for making it here. I mean, I'm not putting anything past them anymore. We can't. You know what I mean?
I wonder if they're the early favorites for the PennLive Cup. They
got championship game coming up, our state semis, right, this week in soccer, field hockey. You mentioned, and we know they're going to do well in winter with swimming. You know that for sure.
Boys basketball,
boys basketball too. Yeah. So, all right, Dan, let's flip over. I'm going to flip down to 3A. We had mentioned that the District 3A championship game is this week. That is Saturday at Wyomissing, West Perry at Wyomissing. It's a rematch of last year's championship game that went horribly awry for the Mustangs. Let's just say it. You walk into the A field at Wyomissing, you better pack your lunch and then some, because that tee by Bob Wolfram just sort of leans on you, and next thing you know, you're down 25-30, and it's tough. It's tough sledding out there. So we'll see if West Perry can sort of unpack their bags real quick and kind of get some things going there in this one. But two guys that we've signaled out for West Perry.
They're not the two guys we normally see.
No. It's hard to talk about West Perry, not talk about Marcus Quaker and Ian Goodling.
Yeah.
Period. It's the same way we would talk about Hershey without mentioning Cabrera. So, but there's a couple of Hockenberries on West Perry, more than one, who have done serious damage all year. And again, the element to have that sort of pounding guy like Brad Hockenberry to run the football and be a reliable 5 to 6 yard a carry guy, if not more, and then to set guys like Quaker loose and Ian Goodling loose has been pretty impressive too. And you mentioned too a guy named Jensen Hockenberry, folk, the linebacker for West Perry too. It's been really good.
Yeah, well, I covered their opening game against Bermudian Springs, and Jensen Hockenberry Folk was all over the field. I believe, according to their tremendous stat keeper, Devin Whitfield.
Tremendous.
Their most tackles they've had in a game, and I think this year, maybe even further than that, he had 16, 17 tackles, pick 86-yard pick six. He was all over the field. We talked to Marcus Quaker on the podcast last week. He said Hockenberry Folk is, one of the more intelligent players he's seen come through that defense. It seems like he's kind of, the next wave of the Westbury defense. He's just been a really good. They've been using him a little bit at running back too. I imagine next year he'll probably get more reps there. Just a huge for them because Caleb Gutshaw has been out for a while with injury, and he was kind of their defensive leader. He also played on offense as well, but he was their real defensive go-getter. And then Brad Hockenberry is also a really good linebacker as well. And he is kind of filled in on offense for Gutshaw because Gutshaw was such a part of that run game. Now Brad Hockenberry is really just the go-to guy there, and he is not a fun guy. He's got a nice little burst while also providing that little bit of lower in the shoulder punch. And, I think that the Hockenberry Quaker read option kind of dual threat trickery has really worked well for them, because the second you see Marcus Quaker fake that handoff to Brad Hockenberry and then he gets the angle, it's an automatic 20-yard gain. So I think that that scheme is going to be really important against wide missing. They're going to need to get for Quaker to pick up those 20-yard gains, those 15-yard gains, keep the chains moving. But then when he's not pulling and when he's handing the ball off to Brad Hockenberry, be able to run through the middle like he does so well.
Yeah, time of possession is never going to be more important than in that game.
Yeah,
it really is.
Got to keep him off the field
because last year was just a grind. Why I'm missing just sort of, they're going to get out. West Perry is going to be outsized again up front.
Yeah,
they always are going to be when they get to this stage, and so time of possession is going to be important to kind of. You mentioned moving the chains. West Perry is going to have to play ball control. There's nothing wrong with 10, 12 play drives.
No.
They eat up 7-8 minutes to keep that offense off the board. So that'll be key for West Perry.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, let's switch over. Who else you got? Who else we were talking about earlier? A couple of catalysts. We had mentioned, I think it's probably the appropriate time to go right to Camp Hill.
Yeah. And I think there's, again, some of these we're being a little smart about. Some of them we can just kind of say it. Drew Branstedter's been one of the best quarterbacks in the playoffs this year. Just what a couple years for this kid, right? We didn't really know what to expect coming from, Camp Hill 2 years ago. My first year at PennLive was a pretty lifeless offense. They pretty much couldn't move the ball. It was tough sledding. Drew Brandstetter comes in the next year, first year starting quarterback, and there's an immediate change. He's able to keep the ball moving without pass-heavy offense. And this year, after missing kind of the middle of the season, has come back and has not batted an eye. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the Mid-Penn, probably in District 3 so far this year.
I would agree.
Especially given, I think he has really good weapons. I think he has very strong weapons. But the offensive line is with the roster size they have, kind of what the numbers they're working with, it's never going to be an elite offensive line. They have to work around that with scheme. And I just think Brandstetter reads defenses so well. He makes really smart decisions, has that offense firing on all cylinders. Just what a year for that kid. And to beat Trinity, I mean, you look at the points, you're like, wow, only 21 points. That's a heck of a performance by Drew Brandstetter in that game. I don't care what.
Yep.
I don't care about the point total. I care about, the matchup and how he was able to overcome that matchup. Just a tremendous performance by Brandstetter.
I look at Brandstetter in this offense like I looked at, and again, I'm going to date myself here, a Rich Lichtel, former Mechanicsburg coach. A field house is named after him. Great sort of innovative offensive mind. When he had Zach Frazier, who eventually moved on to UConn, and for a while Zach was PA's leader in passing. He deployed 5 wide because he was basically outsized every game. This was Mechanicsburg, so it was a decent sized school.
Yeah.
And they were always outsized along the line of scrimmage. So in order to sort of quote unquote hide that, and mask it and not make it a hindrance for you, it was a very quick 5 wide, short, precise passing game.
Make the defense make a tackle.
Right, and it was get those guys on the move, get
Yep.
the defense on the move too, so you could just create this web of this route tree that just confused the hell out of everybody. And he had guys to do it. He had guys to do it. Brand Center has guys to do that, to do it like that. You know what I mean? With Long and Becker and Kobe Moore and Noah Doy. I mean, those 4 guys have been really, really good. And I remember we talked about when Drew was out and Kobe was taking snaps, basically direct snaps, and we're like, you got a fighting chance when that happens, but it is night and day. When compared to when Brandstedter's on a thing. And I just had a text exchange too with a former colleague over the weekend about this Camp Hill team and talking about the victory over Trinity in the district title game. And these guys they're playing with a chip.
Yeah.
It's not a cocky chip.
No.
They're just playing with a chip that's just like, listen, we should have probably had Trinity the first time.
Yep.
It was a 14-13 game in the regular season. And we've got something to prove. And I mean, looking at the bracket, that's all I have to do. I mean, there's a legit chance for Camp Hill to stick for a while.
Yeah.
In the state playoffs. I mean, so and these are the type of guys to do it too.
Yeah, I mean they're winners.
Right. They're just winners.
Yeah, basically this core has it reminds me a little bit of the West Perry core last year, right? Where you had a lot of juniors, just this group of kids that come up together. All these Camp Hill kids are on the baseball team. Almost all of them are on the baseball team.
Mostly all of them.
That made the state championship game. I genuinely think that stuff helps. I asked them at the beginning of the year. They said that it sounds silly, but being able to do that in a different sport, being able to kind of have that confidence that we can compete in baseball, it does instill some confidence that, hey, we're just as good of a program as any of these other teams.
Yeah.
We can make it.
And it's amazing too that what that extra 2 or 3 weeks does for you, just from a camaraderie sense too.
Exactly.
The extra bus rides. You get on a luxury bus instead of a yellow bus. You know what I mean? And you go to places to play these state baseball games and stuff like that. All that stuff matters.
Yeah.
It really does, especially when you're coming up in the ranks in sophomore, junior year. All that stuff matters. And oh, by the way, Tim Bigelow does a fantastic job. He's fantastic job.
He's my MacGyver coach of the year.
Yes, he is the MacGyver.
He just figures out what to do. When Brand said the Kobe Moore quarterback thing was absolutely brilliant stuff. He's just figuring out ways with a small roster to get stuff done.
How do we get stuff done? Exactly. So those are 2 guys. We mentioned Noah Doy. He was one of my guys too. I mean, I'm convinced you could put Noah Doy, who's 5'9", 165 pounds maybe.
Yeah.
I'm convinced you could put him at nose guard and you're going to to get 7-8 tackles out of him.
He's a wrestler,
Yeah, put him anywhere.
Those smaller wrestlers are absolute. You'd rather run into a 220-pound wrestler than a 140-pound wrestler in a dark alley.
Exactly. So. All right, Dan, a couple other guys that you were thinking of?
Well, I'm going to go to Cumberland Valley just because that was the game that I covered last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you something. Nolan Bazolka was a man possessed in that game. He wreaked havoc on a Wilson team that I thought was going to be able to move the ball on them just based on the fact that their offense had kind of been surging. They put up 30-something on Manheim Township the week before.
Right.
They had no answer for Nolan Bazolka. Tommy Hunziker's a really mobile quarterback, really hard to track down. Bazolka was in the backfield just throwing him down. Him and Alex Sauve were tremendous. And then I think the big factor in that game was Caden Pines. Because we know what Cumberland Valley wants to do on 75% of the plays, right? It's similar to Hershey. Give the ball to their giant bruising tailback Bryce Starretts, and he was tremendous in that game. But we know in the playoffs you have to be able to complete passes on big plays. And Caden Pines, every pass in that game by Cumberland Valley was completed to a Pines. It was either Caden or Brody Pines. Caden Pines had 10 catches. It was only, I believe, 68 yards or something like that.
Right.
But the yardage doesn't tell the story. He made a bunch of big catches, including the play of the game. 2nd and goal from the 17-yard line. Runs a deep out route, 17-yard touchdown pass from Grant Shepley. Those are the plays you need to win in the playoffs. You can't just run the ball 40 times a game in 6A. You have to be able to make hay in other ways. And Caden Pines becoming that true number 1 while also playing a really good defensive back has been huge for the
Yeah, you had mentioned Shepley to me too earlier about being a lot more comfortable
Yeah.
under center. We had talked about the quarterback situation at Cumberland Valley at nauseum for 6, 8 weeks, 6, 7 weeks
Yeah.
at least during the regular season. And Shepley seemed to be a guy that, at least at the bare bones, again, Sterritz is still the workhorse.
Yeah.
But at the bare bones level, it's still a guy who
They
can
still
roll out,
trust him.
get you a first down, get you, and he's getting a lot more comfortable too in that. Um, it's interesting you said Bazalka too, because we've really given no, how do we put this, credibility to Cumberland Valley's defense.
Yeah.
And rightly so. I mean, they've been
Early on in the year
right.
they struggled, but like a lot of Josh Oswald teams, they build.
Yes, they started getting a lot better, and a guy like Sauve too, his worth isn't really appreciated until you get sort of to this stage too.
Yeah.
And he's been pretty good.
Yeah.
All year long. It's just the fact that, okay, maybe these tackles are coming 2 or 3 yards downfield. He's not a guy who's constantly in the backfield.
Yeah.
But he's been really, really good too. So congrats to Cumberland Valley for getting to this district.
Yeah,
semis.
who would have thought at the start of the year we'd be saying Cumberland Valley is in the 6A semifinals?
I would not have said that in week 6.
Yeah.
I wouldn't said they're going to make it to there. So 2 other guys too I want to mention too, both from Harrisburg. I cringe to think where Harrisburg seriously. There's an abundance of talent there. Don't get me wrong, but without this guy Sean Lee Jr. under center, I mean, I don't think Harrisburg's still playing football.
Yeah.
At this point, I think he's just anything you need out of the guy you get.
He's one of my favorite guys that I've been able to cover the past 2 years, and it's not because he's not a perfect quarterback by any means.
No.
But he is a guy that when you need a play, he's going to find a way to make a huge play because he can get into when he gets into the space. You can kind of tell just by the speed he's reaching when he's running that he knows he's about to go 40 yards down the field.
Yeah,
and I still think we haven't seen the best of him and Elias Koch's connection.
Right
on big plays. I still think there's room to grow there, which is scary. But he's just a win. He's another one of these kids that you can just say it, he's a winner. He knows how to. He knows in the big moments what he needs.
Yeah, absolutely too. And the other guy too I want to mention too had a tremendous game against Cedar Crest was Kymir Williams.
Yeah,
and Kymir Williams has been it's funny because it seems like every week either a guy like Salim Penn steps up or Nehemiah Ewell steps up or Zamir Hill.
Yeah,
is like kind of featured this and that. Kymir Williams has been like up here all year long and sort of yet been overshadowed.
Well,
I feel
because in the defensive backfield, Quincy Brandon's getting all the
Brandon's
picks,
been tremendous. Yep.
And Elias Koch and
Lee
and Lee on offense. Yeah, but Kymir Williams he's one again. It's another one of these guys that knows how to play football and knows kind of the way he can impact games without it being. He doesn't need to be the flashiest player. He makes flash plays. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of times it's the tackle to keep a pass play 4 or 5 yards rather than 20 yards. We all know how good his brother was, Kyle.
Yes,
and he is living up to that family legacy.
Absolutely. One guy before we get going here to State College, if you don't know, because again, after 10 weeks we kind of lose. State College goes off to District 6 and waits their fate here. They won another District 6A title. So they're still alive. They took out Altoona and get Erie McDowell this week too. Ty Salazer, I guess is the right way to say it. For them, they're wide out and kick return. I think he's been the most consistent player for them all year long.
Especially with their run game not being as good as we thought it would be.
Deontay Sheffy did not play in the game against Altoona. So they're trying to find offense there too, and he seems to be a guy as a pretty good kick returner and punt returner as well, to kind of give them that lift. How long it lasts, I'm not quite sure. McDowell's a good squad, not a great squad, but that should be a pretty competitive game. So
yeah, good pick.
Yeah. All right, Dan. Well, that should do it for this edition, 34 Waggle edition, the PA High School Football Report podcast. We appreciate your time as always. Get out there and watch some postseason football. There's a lot of mid-Penn teams still alive in this thing. We only got 4 weeks to go. So get out there and buy a ticket. It's worth it. Bundle up, and we'll see everyone next week.